We begin with Representative Josh Dobson. Mr. Dobson, thanks for coming by the studio for this conversation.
Thanks, Kelly. Good to be with you.
Well, you could have run for governor. You could be the treasurer, secretary of state, president. You chose labor commissioner. Why?
I think it's, if not the most consequential council of state position beyond the governor, it's certainly one of the top. And I think part of the reason is, first of all, it affects so many people. Pre-COVID, 4 million workers in North Carolina that the Labor Department was responsible for their safety. So I think that's the first thing. Beyond that, the Labor Department has broad oversight. The General Assembly has given broad oversight to the Labor Department. Everything from the ag community, mines and quarries, boilers, wage enforcement, retaliatory discrimination, claims that have been filed. There's a lot to be said for all that the Labor Department does. So because it affects so many people and the broad aspects of the job is what had the appeal to me.
It seems to be a procedural type job, a lot of paperwork and oversight. There's a Republican and a Democrat in this race, and it's a labor job. What's the conservative or Republican approach to workers' rights and labor issues in North Carolina?
I think, I don't know that I view it as conservative or liberal. I view it as a position that is in some ways nonpartisan. I see it as someone who can work both with labor and employers. I think the best way to do it is through training, through education, through a collaborative relationship and not an adversarial relationship. When we have bad actors, obviously that has to be taken care of and that has to be addressed quickly. But I think training, education, collaboration, making sure that employees are trained on the front end, that's the best way to prevent accidents on the back end.
You've been on a handful of committees in the North Carolina House of Representatives, earning your way up to House Appropriations Committee, big chair as they call it. Lots of power there to write our state budget. You're willing to trade that in to go to the Labor Department. Tell me about that experience and what it means when you move over into the Labor Commission role if you're elected.
It's been an amazing experience. The people of the 85th District have given me some kind of opportunity and worked a lot on the Chair of Health Committee, as you said, oversight for the entire budget this past cycle. So it's been an experience that I've been really blessed to be a part of. I've always tried to work across the aisle with Republicans and Democrats. I think that's the best approach to govern as opposed to being adversarial towards one another. And that's the same type of approach that I'll bring to the Department of Labor because I think that's what you need. You need to be able to work with a lot of different people. But in addition to that, no matter who's in charge at the General Assembly, the Labor Commissioner has to work with that General Assembly to move legislation forward or to fix things, to get the appropriations, as you know, that the Labor Department is required. And I think because of the relationships that I've developed on both sides of the aisle, that's going to allow me to work closely with not only employers and employees, but also the General Assembly.
And working with Democrats and Republicans in the House, of course, if you move down the street to the Labor Department, it's workers and it's their bosses and it's these companies. How do you balance the role of making sure our workers stay safe and the companies yet follow the rules? And is there a balance between over-regulating and under-regulating? And how do you see that landscape in North Carolina?
I think there is a balance. Governing's an art. It's not a science. And you have to find that balance working together. And I think you have to be transparent to both employers and employees. Don't try to hide something. Don't try to do something that would benefit one group over the other. And that's the way I've tried to be in the General Assembly. Tried to be on the level, tried to be open and transparent with what it was I was trying to do. And I think if you do that, even if one side or the other doesn't agree with you, at least they know where you stand. And I think that's the same approach that you should have with employees and those that employ them.
What's your impression of the current level of state regulation in our state being placed on employers and businesses across the board, across industries?
That's a broad question.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of different regulatory entities in North Carolina that affects a lot of different organizations. I would say in the Labor Department that we are in a good spot with where we are. It's just a matter of executing the laws that are on the books from the General Assembly. I think that one area that maybe I'd like to take a close look at is when someone files a retaliatory claim or a wage enforcement claim, that claim is made to the Labor Department. Those things need to be expedited quickly, both so the employer can have finality and the employee who's making the claim can have finality on that.
What is a wage enforcement issue for those of us who don't know?
Sure. So if someone is supposed to make $12 an hour, and at the end of the week, their pay does not reflect that $12 an hour. Well, if they can't agree upon it and they can't get it worked out, then they file a claim with the Labor Department to resolve that situation.
What's the most pressing labor issue in this state right now?
I think keeping the employees of North Carolina safe is the most pressing issue. There are, as I said, pre-COVID, 4 million workers in North Carolina, and the Labor Commissioner needs to wake up every day making sure that the employees of North Carolina are safe. If I can, Kelly, when I was a correctional officer making my way through graduate school, we made a promise to each other that we would walk in every day together and we would walk out safely together. That's the same type of mindset that the Labor Commissioner needs for the employees of North Carolina, doing everything they can to make sure they walk in together and they walk out together.
From your research looking into taking the labor role, the labor rules of North Carolina Legislative Service, are regulations established that are pandemic friendly, that do address the issues of COVID-19 and coronavirus in the workplace, or do we need to take a fresh look at some of these rules?
I think that there's always a place to take a fresh look at new rules, but I think anytime that you make changes, you better bring everybody to the table and you make sure everyone knows exactly what's going on. So I think anytime we have a pandemic or anytime, we should always take a fresh look at what the Labor Department's doing and that relationship between the department.
What do you make of this mask issue? Some places require it, some places don't. Some places do require it, but the workers don't wear them. Is that an area the Labor Commissioner, Labor Department needs to be in, whether it's teachers in schools or the cashier and the clerk, and you weighing out executive orders and the counter orders and demands from legislative leaders?
I think the Labor Department should be consultative in that. We only have one governor, and I think it gets problematic when you have 2 or 3 more people issuing orders. I do think that most employers and employees are following, based on what I've seen, most are following the orders and most are wearing masks, and I would certainly encourage everyone to do that in the workplace. But I would need to have more information before I started issuing orders from the Labor Department. There's only one governor at a time, and there's only one governor, so I think we'd be careful about that.
With a commissioner like Ms. Berry in that seat for 20 years, whether it's you, whether it's Ms. Holmes going in there will be a change in leadership. Are you looking to carry Ms. Berry's torch, or would the Josh Dobson administration be different, take a fresh look at processes internally to better serve North Carolinians?
Let me start by saying I think Commissioner Berry has served North Carolina well for the last 20 years. She's brought the right approach, she's been open, she's visited, she's done those things. So her legacy, really, of North Carolina is unprecedented. So I don't think anyone can replace her. But anytime you have a new executive or you have a new leader of the department, there are going to be changes just based on personality. And I'm sure that whether myself or Ms. Holmes is elected, that we will bring our own approach to it. Some things that I want to do, again, I think that, Kelly, I think most people, with all the divisiveness out there, I think most people are hungry for a kind of politics that brings everybody together. And I think because of the nature of the labor role, that's the approach that I will bring. Also, the ag community, as you know, is critical to North Carolina. And I think that's why Commissioner Troxler endorsed me early in the primary, because he knew that he would need a strong partner there. So focusing on ag, focusing on trying to bring people together would be 2 approaches that I would have.
Give us a civics lesson here. As Labor Commissioner, it's always a quiet job. We do see the picture in every elevator, of course. But who do you work with in the Council of State the most in the role of Labor Commissioner, or who do you see yourself partnering with to move an agenda that helps workers and balances business interests?
As I said, I think on the Council of State, probably other than the governor, obviously, that's who you're going to work the most closely with to pass legislation for funding items, administrative oversight, all of those things, the governor. But second to that, as I said, would probably be the Commissioner of Agriculture, working closely with the ag community. And then I would add to that, you have to have that relationship with the General Assembly, no matter whether it's Democrat or Republican that's in charge. And there's been an ebb and flow, as you know, over the last 30 years. So you have to have that. So that's the three, if I had to choose, would be the three that I would want to work with, or that the Labor Department would want to work with.
Well, the second you're not a legislator next year, you won't be a legislator. You'll be one of them that they deal with.
Yeah, right.
What's the appetite in the General Assembly for labor issues, for the type of issues you see might come up in early 2021 if you're elected?
I think I think a lot of it depends on the election in November, and it's as volatile, as you know, as it's ever been. But I think there's an appetite to listen to labor issues, Labor Department concerns, and how we can strengthen the Labor Department, both for employers and employees. So I'm encouraged about who's going to be there. We know, based on some of the races and the way the districts are drawn, there's going to be both Democrats and Republicans that are there now that are going to return. And I work well with both of them, and I look forward to that. So I'm encouraged.
This is a question I probably wouldn't ask very many Council of State candidates. However, in the Labor Department and other departments, your bureaucracy is pretty powerful. A lot of I won't say entrenched, but long-time serious state servants who've been there, who've seen people come and go. If you don't win them over, you're not going to be effective. Let's face that. What kind of boss are you? What kind of leadership style are you bringing into that office if you win?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I've always taken the approach that just because you're an elected official doesn't make you an expert on everything. You need to listen to people that are around you, people with the experience. That's the way I've tried to govern in the General Assembly. And then you try to make the best decision you can based on the information you have. That's the way that I would approach the Labor Department. Those people that are there, who have been there, who know the job, who know the relationships, I would want to listen to them, get all of the information that I can, and then make the most effective decision that I can. I don't see myself as a micromanager. I see someone who seeks information, who seeks and asks a lot of questions by people who are there, and then tries to make the most effective decision I can based on that information.
All right, voters, that's Representative Josh Dobson, the Republican nominee for North Carolina Commissioner of Labor. Mr. Dobson, thanks for being on the program and having this conversation with me.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate you having me.